There is a moment that comes for the chosen one that no one warns you about, and it arrives not with thunder or with visible warfare, but with silence so complete, so suffocating, so total in its reach, that your own heartbeat starts to sound like an accusation. You lie awake at 3 in the morning, and the weight on your chest is not anxiety in the clinical sense. It is something older, something that presses from the outside in, something that knows your name and hates the sound of it. You have felt this before, this gravitational heaviness that descends without warning and parks itself on your sternum like a spiritual entity, claiming territorial rights over your body while you sleep. This is not imagination. This is not the residue of stress or the byproduct of a hard week. This is the dream of persecution made manifest in your waking hours, and it begins before you even open your eyes, because the enemy does not wait for you to be conscious to run his operations. He works in the threshold between sleep and waking, because that is where your defenses are lowest, and your subconscious is most receptive to the seeds of defeat. You have dreamed of running, haven't you? Of moving your legs with every ounce of will you possess and going nowhere. Of corridors that stretch longer the faster you try to move through them. Of voices behind you that you cannot identify but recognize as dangerous. That dream is not random neural firing. That dream is a spiritual broadcast, a transmission from a realm that wants you to internalize the lie that no matter how hard you try, you will never outpace what is chasing you. But here is what that dream never shows you, because the enemy is a strategist, and a strategist never reveals the part of the story that defeats his narrative. What is chasing you in that dream is not stronger than what is inside you. It is only louder, and loud is not the same as powerful. Loud is the performance of power from something that already knows it is losing. You have been running in that corridor for longer than you realize, carrying a weight that was never yours to carry, bleeding from wounds that were inflicted by people who smiled while they opened them. The smile that does not reach the eyes. You know exactly which smile I am describing, because you have seen it on the face of someone who called themselves your friend, your supporter, your community, someone who stood in your presence and offered what sounded like a compliment, but landed in your spirit like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples of unease that you tried to dismiss as paranoia. That smile is a spiritual weapon, and it is wielded by people who cannot stand the sight of what you are becoming. The poisoned compliment is not accidental. It is calculated. It is the enemy's way of using the mouths of those closest to you to deposit doubt directly into your atmosphere, because a frontal assault would alert your spiritual defenses. But a compliment coated in contempt slides past the gate undetected. They say they are proud of you, while their eyes calculate your threat level. They celebrate your wins with words that sound supportive, but carry a frequency of resentment so thick you can almost taste the bitterness underneath the performance. This is narcissistic warfare at its most sophisticated, and it is happening in your inner circle with devastating precision. The people deployed against you were not random. They were selected and positioned because they could access the rooms of your trust, and they have been operating there quietly, systematically, draining your confidence through 1,000 small moments of subtle sabotage that you could never quite name, but always felt in your body as a persistent low-grade exhaustion that no amount of sleep ever fully repaired. You won't defeat this attack alone. Breaking these emotional hexes requires a higher code, which is exactly why I just released the 3 keys to a prosperous life trilogy, whose unlocking link is in the pinned comment. Access it before the fog blinds you again, because what you are carrying right now is a targeted oppression, and it requires more than willpower to dismantle. It requires revelation, and that revelation is closer than the weight on your chest is trying to make you believe. Now understand what they actually want, because the enemy's assignment through these people is not simply to harm you. It is to replicate you without your anointing, to steal your identity without being able to carry the consecration that makes your identity worth something. You have noticed it, haven't you? The blatant copy. The way certain people in your life began to mirror your language, your aesthetics, your vision, your very way of moving through the world, as though they were trying to wear you like a costume. And it confused you at first, because imitation is supposed to be flattery, and you tried to receive it that way, tried to be generous in your interpretation of what was happening. But something in your gut would not settle, because your gut is a spiritual instrument, and it was registering the truth that your mind was trying to soften. They do not want what you have. They want to be who you are. And that distinction matters enormously, because what you have can be given, shared, taught, multiplied, but who you are is not transferable. Who you are is the product of every trial that broke you, and every silence that rebuilt you, and every moment of faithfulness that no one witnessed but heaven recorded. That cannot be copied, that cannot be replicated, that cannot be extracted from you, no matter how closely they study your surface. Because what makes you dangerous in the spirit realm is not your talent or your strategy or your visibility. It is the covenant that was written on your life before you drew your first breath, and that covenant carries a seal that no counterfeit can forge. The people who tried to become you exposed themselves in the process, because a copy always reveals the original by the very fact of its inadequacy. Their imitation of you is not your competition, it is your confirmation. It is heaven's way of showing you that even your enemies understand that what is inside you is worth pursuing, even if they pursue it through theft, rather than through the legitimate path of transformation. The spiritual tribunal has a record of every theft that was attempted against your destiny, and that record is not inert. It is active. It is generating a response in the invisible realm that will make itself known in the visible realm at an hour that you cannot schedule or predict, but that heaven has already set. Every act of identity theft committed against you by people who could not earn what you carry has been logged in a court that does not operate on human timelines and does not require human witnesses to render its verdicts. The spiritual tribunal does not need you to fight your own case. It needs you to stay in your lane, to keep building, to keep walking in the identity that was assigned to you before the foundation of the world, so that when the verdict comes, the person it vindicates is clearly and recognizably you and not the hollow copy that tried to wear your face. This is the divine promotion embedded in the pain of watching someone imitate your life. You are not losing your identity to them. You are being clarified by the contrast. The gold does not become less gold because someone tried to paint iron the same color. The fraud only makes the original more verifiable, and what God has declared original in you, no amount of imitation can dilute, because the anointing on your life is not aesthetic, it is architectural. It is built into the very structure of your assignment, and it cannot be reproduced by observation alone. The enemy knows this, which is why the copy is always accompanied by sabotage. They want to become you and destroy you simultaneously, because if they cannot have what you have, the next best outcome for them is ensuring that you cannot use it either. But God is not confused about who owns the anointing, and neither should you be. You wake up at 3 in the morning and the room is different, not visually, not in any way you could explain to a doctor or a skeptic. But your body knows, your chest knows. There is a pressure that was not there when you closed your eyes, a weight that sits on your sternum with a specificity that feels intentional, a presence in the room that your physical senses cannot locate, but your spirit cannot ignore. This is sleep paralysis, and it is not simply a neurological event, though the medical explanation exists and is real at its level. But beneath the neurological reality is a spiritual one, and the spiritual one is this: You are being worked on at the frequency level while your conscious defenses are suspended, and what you feel pressing down on you is not a random phenomenon. It is an assigned oppression, a concentrated effort from the realm of darkness to interrupt the restoration that happens in your sleep, to intercept the divine downloads that God sends through the unconscious mind, to jam the signal between heaven and the instrument that heaven is trying to calibrate. The weight on your chest at dawn is the enemy's acknowledgement that you are significant enough to target while you are most vulnerable. Insignificant people do not receive this level of targeted spiritual interference. The intensity of the attack is always proportional to the size of the assignment. And when you understand that the darkness pressing down on your chest at 3 in the morning is not power but panic, when you understand that it is doing this because it can feel what is being built inside you, and it knows that what is being built will cost it territory, the experience transforms. It does not stop being uncomfortable, but it stops being terrifying. You are not being crushed, you are being contested. And contested is not the same as defeated. Contested means you have something worth fighting over. Contested means the enemy already lost the first battle, which was the battle to make you unworthy of divine attention. And now he is running a secondary operation to make you unaware of your own worth. Do not give him that victory. Do not let the weight on your chest become the weight of surrender. The physical manifestations of spiritual oppression are not limited to the night hours. They follow you into the day and embed themselves in the material world with an agenda that looks like coincidence, but feels like something more purposeful. The light that flickers when you walk into a room, the electronics that malfunction at precisely the wrong moment, the car that dies when you have somewhere important to be, the burned-out light bulb that becomes a pattern rather than an accident, a sequence of material interference that accumulates into a narrative of disruption. You have been told that this is anxiety, that this is selective attention, that you are simply noticing the normal entropy of objects because you are already primed to see signs of warfare. And perhaps some of that is true at the psychological level. But the psychological and the spiritual are not enemies. They are languages describing the same territory from different elevations. And what the spiritual language says about material interference generated by oppression spikes is this: when the frequency of a targeted individual is being compressed by sustained spiritual attack, that compression creates a kind of electromagnetic instability in the immediate environment that manifests as disruption in systems that are sensitive to energy fluctuation. Your anointing is a frequency. The oppression against it is a counter-frequency. The collision of those two forces produces turbulence. The turbulence shows up in your environment as chaos, as things breaking, as plans collapsing, as a persistent low-grade sense that nothing is flowing the way it should. But here is the alchemical truth hidden inside the chaos. Turbulence is not evidence of abandonment. Turbulence is evidence of collision, and collision requires two forces meeting at the same point. If there were nothing inside you worth opposing, there would be nothing generating the counter-frequency. The disruption in your environment is not proof that God left. It is proof that the enemy showed up, which means God already told him you were worth the visit. Your chaos is confirmation. Your broken things are battlefield evidence. And battlefields do not exist without soldiers, and soldiers are not deployed to defend empty territory. You have walked into rooms and felt it before you could name it. The shift in the atmosphere when someone arrives whose spirit carries the frequency of envy, and the room responds. The conversation that was flowing dries up. The laughter that was easy becomes effortful. The air itself seems to thicken into something that makes authentic connection feel suddenly exhausting and strange. You are not imagining this. The silence in the room when envy enters is a real spiritual phenomenon, because envy is not simply an emotion, It is a transmission. It broadcasts from the person carrying it outward into the environment and interacts with every other spiritual frequency present. It is the heaviness in the atmosphere when someone is present who cannot celebrate you, who sits in the room of your life and smiles with their face while their spirit is cataloguing your blessings as offenses against them personally. You feel it in your body as a particular kind of tiredness, the kind that comes not from physical exertion, but from having to maintain your light against a presence that is actively, if unconsciously, working to extinguish it. The spiritual tribunal has a category for this, and it is called the evil eye, not as superstition, but as a precise description of a spiritual dynamic that operates across cultures and centuries because it is real, it is biblical, and it is one of the primary weapons deployed against chosen ones by people who are too close to them to be easily identified and too spiritually contaminated to be safely kept nearby. The divine promotion inside this particular trial is the development of spiritual discernment so refined that you can read a room before the room reads you, so that you are never again caught unaware by the weight that enters with certain people, never again confused about why your peace evaporated the moment a specific individual arrived. God is using the heaviness to train your spiritual senses into instruments of detection that will protect your assignment for the rest of your life. The betrayal that breaks you is never the one that comes from an enemy. An enemy cannot betray you because betrayal requires trust as its precondition, and you never gave your enemy your trust. The betrayal that breaks you is the one that comes from the Judas sleeping in the same tent. The one who ate at your table, who knew your fears, who heard your plans before they were plans, and your dreams before they were dreams, who held the weight of your vulnerability with what looked like reverence and turned out to be reconnaissance. The unexpected betrayal is a wound that operates differently from other wounds because it does not just hurt the present version of you. It reaches back and retroactively poisons every memory you have of the relationship, every moment that felt sacred, every time you lowered your guard because you believed you were safe. That retroactive poisoning is intentional. It is designed to make you distrust your own discernment, to make you question your ability to read people, to install a trauma bond so thorough that even after the betrayer is gone, they are still living rent-free in the space where your confidence used to live, making you hesitate before trusting again, making every new relationship carry the ghost of the wound they inflicted. This is the enemy's long game in the aftermath of betrayal. He wants you to be so scarred by the Judas that you close yourself to the John, to the one who actually sees you, to the covenant connection that God has prepared as both the healing and the next chapter. You cannot afford to let the wound of the past govern the territory of the future. The Judas in your story fulfilled a function, and that function, as brutal as it feels to admit, was necessary. Not because betrayal is good, but because without it, you would never have left the room you were in. And the room you were in was never going to be large enough to contain what God was building in you. The betrayer opened the door to your exodus by making your current location uninhabitable. And every exodus, every departure from what was comfortable and familiar and contaminated leads eventually to a promised land that could not have been reached without the pain of the leaving. The animals know before you do. This is not metaphor. The dog that barks at your friend who insists they love you, who bristles and will not settle, and watches with a fixed, unblinking certainty that something is wrong with this person in your space. That animal is not malfunctioning. That animal is functioning at a frequency that your socialized human consciousness has been trained to override. The reacting animal is a spiritual instrument that God embedded in the created order as a warning system for the chosen ones who have been gaslit into doubting their own discernment. When the animal in your life refuses to make peace with someone you have decided to trust, do not perform social comfort at the expense of spiritual intelligence. The dog's alarm is not embarrassing. It is a gift. It is confirmation that what your gut has been whispering is not paranoia. It is perception. The animal responds to frequency without filtering it through the performance of human social expectation, without the need to be polite, without the fear of being labeled paranoid or ungrateful or antisocial. It simply responds to what is actually there beneath the surface of what the person is presenting. And what the animal is responding to in those moments is the dissonance between the presented frequency and the true frequency, the gap between what the person is performing and what they are actually carrying. That gap is what the enemy uses to gain access. That gap is the spiritual wound that is leaking contamination into your atmosphere. And the animal, unbothered by social consequence, is simply pointing at the leak and saying, "I smell it, I see it, I will not pretend it is not there." Take the warning. Adjust your proximity, not with cruelty or confrontation, but with the quiet wisdom of someone who finally trusts their own spirit enough to honor what it has been trying to tell them through every instrument available, including the four-legged ones. As I teach heavily and deeply to those who arrive at the 3 Keys to a Prosperous Life trilogy, I've already left the link for you in the pinned comment. This weight on your chest is just a symptom of a warfare that has been waged against your specific frequency since before you understood what your frequency was. You are not crazy for feeling hunted. You are not dramatic for feeling like the universe itself is sending you signals that something larger than your circumstances is occurring. The numerical coincidences that interrupt your days, the 1111 that appears when you are at the lowest point of your doubt and somehow restores just enough oxygen to your faith to keep you moving, the 333 that shows up in the timestamp of the message you almost did not send, the sequences that break through the static of your ordinary life with a precision that feels like someone is knocking on the window of your consciousness to remind you that you are not alone in this corridor. These are not accidents. There are no accidents in the life of a chosen one. There are only coordinates. The 1111 is not a generic spiritual greeting. It is a personalized alert from a realm that has been tracking your journey with more attention than any human observer. A realm that knows exactly where you are in the arc of your story and is dispatching these numerical signals as confirmation that the navigation is active, that the path is not abandoned, that the silence you are moving through is not empty space, but active preparation for what comes next. The universal compass is waking you up not because you fell asleep spiritually, but because the next phase requires a level of awareness that your current settings cannot accommodate. You are being upgraded while you walk. The numbers are the notification that the upgrade is in progress. Do not dismiss them. Do not explain them away with theories of selective perception. Let them do what they were sent to do, which is to remind you that seen and unseen are not opposites, but dimensions of the same reality, and the one who governs both has not lost your coordinates, has not reassigned your file, has not decided that the silence was a verdict instead of a preparation. Then comes the victory. And you thought victory would feel differently. You thought it would feel like celebration, like the noise you had been denied for so long, finally breaking open into the applause and the recognition and the crowd of people who finally understood what you were carrying. You thought the winning would feel like vindication with an audience. But the solitary victory arrives the way God's most profound movements always arrive, quietly, undeniably, and in a room with only you and him, and the full, shaking awareness of what it costs to get here. You break the barrier and you win, and then you cry alone. And the crying is not grief. It is the release of every year of faithfulness that had no witness. Every night you held the line when letting go would have been so much easier. Every moment you chose to stay in covenant with your assignment when your assignment offered you nothing in return but the quiet conviction that you were not finished yet. The solitary victory is the most sacred kind because it has not been diluted by performance. No one was watching when you decided to keep going, so no one can claim credit for the outcome. This win belongs entirely to you and the God who watched you earn it in the dark. And that is precisely what makes it permanent. Victories that require an audience to feel real are fragile. They depend on the audience's continued approval to maintain their substance. But this one, the one you earned in the silence, the one that came after the betrayal and the paralysis and the weight on your chest and the flickering lights and the poisoned compliments and the copied identity and the envy in every room you entered, this one is structural. It is built into the foundations of who you became by surviving all of it. No one can take this from you because no one gave it to you. It was forged in a furnace that only the chosen ones survive, and the temperature of that furnace was calibrated not to destroy you, but to eliminate everything in you that was not gold. The gold that emerges from this level of furnace does not look like the gold the world is accustomed to selling. It does not come in polished packages with marketable aesthetics and shareable highlight moments. It comes in the form of a human being who has been to the place where the self dissolves and the assignment takes over, where your personal preference for comfort and recognition becomes secondary to the weight of what you were sent here to do. You carry it differently now. The shoulders that used to round under the pressure of other people's opinions have straightened under the weight of covenant. The voice that used to soften and apologize and reduce itself to fit the comfort level of rooms that were never meant to hold it has found the register that was always its true one, the register that does not need permission from the audience to speak, that does not adjust its frequency to avoid disturbing the sleeping. You are awake now in a way that is permanent, not the temporary wakefulness of crisis or the performative wakefulness of spiritual trend, but the bone-deep, quiet, irrevocable alertness of someone who has seen the machinery behind the curtain and can no longer pretend the curtain is the whole show. This awakening is what the enemy was trying to prevent through every weapon deployed against you, through every misaligned relationship and poisoned environment and season of invisibility. Because an awakened chosen one is not a threat that can be managed through conventional warfare. An awakened chosen one is a frequency that disorganizes the enemy's systems simply by existing in full alignment with the assignment, simply by showing up and being undiluted and unafraid and no longer negotiating with the voices that demanded reduction. The chains do not break all at once. That is the first sign that most chosen ones miss, because they have been waiting for a dramatic, visible, instantaneous liberation, the kind that comes with a visible shaking and a clear before and after that everyone can witness and document. But the actual breaking of chains sounds more like silence falling in a place where noise used to live, like the sudden absence of the anxiety that had become so normalized you mistook it for your personality. You wake up one morning and the weight is not on your chest, not lighter, gone. And it takes you a moment to register the absence because your nervous system has been calibrated to expect the weight, has organized itself around the presence of the oppression the way a tree grows around a fence that was installed in its path. The absence of the weight is disorienting before it is liberating. This is the first sign the chains broke. The second sign is that people who had access to your peace start to become visibly agitated by your stillness. Your calm begins to function as a mirror for their chaos, and they cannot stand the reflection. The third sign is that the resources that were blocked begin to move, not in a flood, but in a trickle that carries with it an unmistakable quality of divine origin, a rightness of timing that human engineering cannot produce. The fourth sign is that the dreams change. The corridor of running that never ends becomes something else. You find yourself in the dream with wings, or standing on high ground, or looking down at the thing that was chasing you and seeing it for what it actually is, small, frightened, and no longer relevant to the direction you are moving. The fifth sign is that your voice changes. Not the literal sound of it, though sometimes that too, but the authority in it, the way your words begin to carry a weight that affects the atmosphere around you in ways that surprise even you. You say a thing, and the thing responds. You declare, and the declaration finds its target. You are no longer broadcasting into a void. You are operating as a frequency that the created order recognizes and responds to. The sixth sign that retaliation has arrived is that the ones who minimized you become suddenly very interested in your proximity. The people who overlooked you when you were invisible, who walked past your fire when it was burning at its lowest, who could not be bothered to acknowledge what you were carrying when it cost them nothing to do so, they begin to orbit. They show up at the edges of your story with explanations for their absence and invitations to re-enter the closeness that they squandered when you needed it. Do not mistake this return for vindication. It is not the universe confirming that they finally see you. It is the universe revealing what was always true about them, that they were drawn to your anointing the way moths are drawn to light, without the capacity to honor it, only to circle it. The return of the ones who left you in your wilderness is not a sign that you should open the gates. It is a sign that you have become visible enough to attract what was always going to come once the oil was flowing. Guard the gates, not with bitterness, not with the cold satisfaction of revenge, but with the clear-eyed wisdom of someone who understands that proximity to anointing without alignment to covenant is a dangerous combination for everyone involved, including the one seeking re-entry. The seventh sign is the most subtle and the most powerful. It is the moment when the thing that was supposed to destroy you becomes the platform from which your voice reaches the people who needed to hear exactly what you survived. Your testimony was never just yours. It was always a transmission. Every wound that was inflicted with the intention of silencing you becomes, in the hands of God, a microphone. The betrayal that was meant to be the end of your credibility becomes the beginning of your authority, with everyone who has been betrayed in the same way. The invisibility that was designed to make you feel worthless becomes the exact qualification you needed to speak to everyone who has been made to feel unseen. The wilderness was not a detour, it was a seminary. And now the graduation is not a ceremony, it is a commission. You are not at the end of your story. You are at the end of the version of your story that the enemy wrote for you. The one where you stayed small, stayed confused, stayed contained inside a life that was never calibrated for the weight of what you carry. That version ends here. That version ends with the silence breaking open, not into the noise of other people's approval, but into the clarity of your own divine assignment, undiluted and unafraid, and no longer negotiating with anything that cannot honor the covenant written on your life. The Enoch anointing that is being activated in your life right now is not about disappearance in the sense of absence. It is about translation. It is about the moment when your